Welcome to the Dreamboat. Remember, you can join the DRI for just £30 a year. You get access to more content, including videos and discounts for our events. It's a great way of finding out more about our work, joining our dream community, and supporting this podcast. Details in the show notes and at driccpe.org.uk/membership. Welcome to the Dreamboat podcast, a place where we talk about everything dreamy, all you wanted to know about dreams and where you might find some answers. My name is Dave Billington, and I'm a psychotherapist, and I'm also director of the Dream Research Institute. And I'm joined by fellow psychotherapist Laura Payne.
Hello, I'm Laura Payne, and I'm also part of the Dream Research Institute. And we're called the Dreamboat because we are recording our podcast overlooking the beautiful canal barges here at Little Venice in London.
We'll be looking at dreams, talking to guest experts, and answering your questions.
Now, let's get on with the episode. How many of us have been woken by our kids saying they've had a bad dream or a nightmare? And also, what about our kids saying that they've had a recurring dream over several years? What does that all mean? And more importantly, how do we handle this as parents or even as grandparents?
Yes, understanding children's dreams is something we'd all like to know more about. And today we are pleased to be joined by Shaun Goodwin. Shaun has practiced as a child integrative psychotherapist and counsellor for 20 years, both privately and in schools. He teaches, he supervises, and has been vice chair of the UKCP Children's and Young Persons College for 5 years. And he's also a very dear colleague of ours.
I was going to say, Rena and I have worked with Shaun and for a long time, and I know that his practice will include significant dream work. So, Shaun, welcome to the Dreamboat.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Well, I don't know if children often dream of dreamboats, but I know there are obviously several recurring motifs. So, Shaun, when you're listening to children's dreams, and obviously you do, what regular material comes up and what advice do you give?
I think the most important point to make is there's two very distinct types of dream. If you could call night terrors a dream, but obviously something is happening for the poor child. But I think the important thing to say is that a night terror isn't a nightmare. A night terror is completely scary for the parents to see and witness because the child will be thrashing about, will be in apparent agony, will be going through all sorts of horrible visual things. But the point is that in the morning, the child will just not remember. And not only that, but if you actually try and intervene, you can make things worse. So the way you deal with a night terror is completely different to the way you would deal with a nightmare. And a night terror is so much scarier because it can also involve, sleepwalking and that sort of thing. But whatever is going on, we don't know a lot about it, and it tends to sort of disappear around about 10. It starts around 4 or 5. And, in that situation, it really is for the parent just to be present and keep the child safe, because, of course, they could potentially do themselves some damage just by thrashing around about. But at the end of the day, if you would try to wake up the child, then the risk is that they won't know who you are, they could be completely terrified, and they're being in the middle of something they don't understand. So, I think it's important to make that distinction for parents, that if you're up against a night terror, you're in a very different place than if you're, dealing with normal dreams.
And when you say between 4 and 10 years old, what do you think is actually going on in the sort of child's brain or psyche in that period for night terrors to become so, I suppose the word I'm looking for is prevalent, perhaps?
It's amazing, isn't it? Who knows? I mean, they're obviously playing through something, and they must be unconsciously, resolving something within themselves. But it's very difficult to research because that would be dangerous for the child. One of the ways you work with dreams is you wake the person up when they're in the middle of the dream and you say, what's going on? You can't do that in this case. I mean, one piece of advice I would give parents with night terrors is that they normally happen at the same time each night, round about 2, 3 in the morning, usually, something like that. So if you wake the child up before the night terror starts, so if you've got a night terror that tends to happen round about 2, if you wake the child up about 1:45 to 2, 2:20, then that can work. And, you read the child a story or chat to them or give them a glass of milk or whatever you're going to do with them. But at the end of the day, that is one way that you can work with night terrors and hopefully, reduce the number of times they happen. But it's nightmares, and where you really can start to then work with the unconscious. I've got a lovely quote from good old Fritz Perls: "Dreams are a memo from self to self," and and that's what children are getting. That they're receiving a memo about the day, about something that's happening in their life. See, Jung said, "Dawn is born at midnight," which is another quote I love.
Oh, yeah, love that.
It's great, isn't it? So it's very much about, the child is getting messages with nightmares. And, they tend to be scary. There's 2 issues to that. I think the world is scary. And if you're a 4, 5, 6-year-old, then you're up against all sorts of things you don't understand yet or fully comprehend. So I think it's not surprising that, a lot of what you dream is quite scary because your unconscious is trying to make sense of it.
I'm very struck at the distinction you've made between night terrors and nightmares and how it's like psyche knows best. When you said it's a memo from self to self, night terrors is not necessarily a memo to the self. It's not a communication. Something might be getting processed. There might be some biological or psychic process going on, but it's not meant to be conscious. Whereas the nightmare or a dream, as you offered, is a memo to be received.
Is a dialogue. And, Rena, I sometimes feel, working with dreams, that the unconscious is talking to the parent or the therapist or what have you. One of the problems, of course, the child has is it's not easy to articulate what's going on because they have limited language. And that's one of the reasons I think that dreams tend to be recurrent with children. Adults can have recurrent dreams, but with children, they are very, very prevalent. I'd go as far as to say that almost half of a child's dreams tend to repeat. And I think the thing is that the person is going, are you listening? The unconscious is going, oh, we're trying to get this message through.
Yeah, exactly. Will somebody please hear me?
Yes.
Well, I often say, dreams are the psyche knocking at the door saying, hello. Then we want you to pay attention to this, please. And why should it just sort of sit with adults? It starts in childhood. This communication system starts early. And I often think, depending on how, as you say, parents or even child counsellors listen, depends on how the material ever gets worked with. I'm just thinking, Shaun, for the sake of our listeners, can you just describe for you what is the difference between terrors and nightmares? How would you describe the difference?
With terrors, the key difference is that the child just doesn't enter the consciousness of the child. The child, if you wake the child up, the child may well be scared, and it can be quite dangerous because where am I? What's happening? So they will be aware that they've been through some kind of visceral process, but they won't have any idea about the fact that they were as frightened as they seemed, or they will. Whereas with a nightmare, the child will immediately start to tell you what was happening. Like this monster was chasing me, or I was falling off a cliff, or whatever it may have been. The child will immediately be able to articulate what is going on and will be aware, that it is a nightmare and can have a cuddle and so on. So it's a very, very different presentation and quite easy to identify. Also, of course, with nightmares, you often don't know that the child's having the nightmare. They will just be, in their own world, and it will just be in the REM place. But one thing I did want to mention in that context is I think what's interesting is I think that the veil is thinner with a child than it is with an adult, so that dreams will cross over into reality. And I think you can, good examples of that would be things like imaginary friends, toys that come to life, or various, live dreams, waking dreams are very prevalent with children, that they start to see and experience what adults have been better able to boundary, if you like. And it can sort of cross over in that way.
That's really fascinating, because we get a lot of obviously adult guests and comments from people writing in. I had a dream when I was a child, and I still occasionally have that dream. So it's interesting how this material, particularly as you say, Shaun, if it's not worked on, can just linger with us. It becomes so embedded.
Yeah, and that's very common. Adults still remember vividly, usually 2 or 3 dreams from childhood. Mine's a stingray. And I had this stingray that was chasing me around and still exists somewhere in my consciousness, and I've still got no idea what it was. But but yeah, exactly. And I think that's why they are recurrent, because at times it's really difficult to work with them and work out exactly what the unconscious is trying to communicate to you, and that's where sand tray, clay, art, enactment, puppets, that's where all that comes in. And as a therapist, what you will do is rather than trying to put the poor child through a process of trying to describe this weird experience they've had, you'd actually say, how about putting it in the sand tray, or how about enacting it out with the puppets or drawing it, and so on, and that can be really helpful.
Shaun, can you just describe what sand tray work is about? Because Rena and I are nodding, knowing exactly what you're talking about. I think a lot of people are thinking,
yes, what am I talking
how do you put
about?
a dream in sand?
Yes, it's not the thing you get in parks that dogs poo in. We're not talking about that. Yes, it's a wonderful tradition, and I mean it goes back to the 1930s originally, with Dora Kulf. So, it's been around for a long, long time. And it's one of those unusual tools that all modalities have embraced, simply because it's so impactful. And basically, you have a box of some kind, normally a wooden sandbox. You put sand in it, and you have a selection of symbols of various types. And you just encourage the child to create, a story in the sand. And it gives them a way of articulating without having to find words, that they can actually start to just create what they wanted to create in the sand. And very often children will embrace it in a very unconscious way, almost like a waking dream. I had a lovely something to share. I was working with a 4-year-old, and her father was really unreliable. The parents had separated, and let her down a lot. Wouldn't turn up for Saturday afternoons, promised to take her down the park and then not turn up. Anyway, this had occurred on one occasion, and Mum said that on the way to the therapy, she said to this lovely child, are you going to talk to Shaun about this, that your dad didn't turn up and you're really angry? And she said, no, I'm not. And Mum said, well, why not? And she said, because I'm going to show him in my play.
Oh.
So it is really at quite an early age, that the child can start to grasp, that they are actually being given a vehicle. And of course, you can use art as well. I've mentioned puppets and so on. And what will happen, as we do working with adults, you will enact the dream in this plane. But with children, they are particularly open to that. And you will actually find that sometimes there will be a crossover of the veil, as I mentioned. Would you like another example?
Oh, yeah, we love examples.
You love it?
Yeah. Well, it helps people understand what you're trying to say. It brings it alive. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was working at a school. This was a young woman. She was 12, 13. She was older, and the head of year came to see me at the school where I was working, and they were really worried about her because she'd been dreaming about her dog who had died, and now the dog was she was seeing the dog at school on the way home. She was seeing the dog. The dog was around, and when he came to see me, he was, oh, we don't know what to do about this, and can you help, and so on, and he. As adults often do, going to schizophrenia and what on earth's happening. And I said, okay, well, bring her to see me. So she came, and we got to know each other. And then I asked her about the dog. And what had happened is that Mum, bless her, had decided that it was best for the child if the dog was put to sleep when she was at school, because she didn't want to upset the child. So So she got home from school to her dog gone.
Oh, God.
And, had been put to sleep, for all the right reasons, age and so on. But so I said to her, you haven't had a chance to say goodbye, have you? And she said, no, I'm really sad about that, and because I love that dog. And I said, well, look, how about writing a letter to? And she said, yeah, that would be, yes, okay. So she went away, and she came back the next week, and she'd written a letter to her dog. And, this is pure Gestalt for people that don't know it, but, this is a way of working. And I said, okay, imagine the dog's in the chair there. And she read the letter about how much she was going to miss her and hope to see her in the future in heaven and so on. And as you can imagine, the dreams went, the visions went, and so on. Yeah. And, but it was an instance where the dream had actually popped out of sleep and was just everywhere,
I think it's a great idea, a great example, actually, of waking dream and how it does sort of linger. I think even as adults, we've all had dreams where we've woken up and we know it still feels really present. And with this, it's got a vibration that hangs around. And for kids, I can imagine that's quite a scary sensation in many ways.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And in this case, for the adults as well, because they were like, what on earth's going on, And so it was, and yet, the explanation was a lot simpler than where they were going.
Yeah, exactly.
Rena,
you were mentioning that you were talking about some of your kids' dreams and grandkids' dreams.
Kids and their bedtime routines, and how you settle them, and they became quite elaborate. I had raised 3 boys, and my eldest always had to have this quite elaborate bedtime routine, and it had to follow very specific orders, and I was getting worried that it was quite rigid. He was getting quite attached to this rigid order of things. And I had 2 younger kids that I had to attend to, so it was what was becoming, it was a way of, like, there was a certain almost gestalt, or a wheel, a cycle of things that we had to get through before he would actually fall off, and he needed me there. But what I noticed was it was following was like it had to have me get annoyed, like until I got annoyed, and then he could register my annoyance. Okay, now I get everything, now I understand, and it's time to go to sleep. And that really bothered me. I didn't want it to be the signal to get ready to actually go to sleep is, all right, Mom's annoyed with me, all's right with the world, because I'm taking too long.
I've got a reaction offer.
So I don't know where it came from. I might have been on the training. No, it's before I was on the training. But something came in. He was very into Rugrats. And we used to get into these very elaborate discussions about Rugrats and imagining the different things that the kids would get up to, particularly the relationship between Tommy Pickles and the baby. And because he had two younger brothers, but he had been with me on his own for quite a while. He was almost 5 when the second one came along. So it started making me I wonder. So we just would set up bedtime every night as this, I wonder what Tommy and Tommy Pickles and and this Pickles, and we'd name all the different characters, and I would just give him the prompt. And then he would set them free and create a narrative, a story. And he would start falling asleep to that story, and then that fed his dreams, and it created a whole different way for him to fall asleep, where it was a creative interplay rather than all right, now she's annoyed me because I asked for the 17th book and like she's now annoyed.
Yes, you changed the narrative, and Melanie St. Ong, she's actually done some research around this, and that you can control nightmares and difficulties like that with a reframing, and it works very effectively with children. Of course, we knew that anyway. I mean, when I read the research, that's already how I was working with that. But it's really interesting that there is now research coming through which is showing that this is the way to do it. But I had a young teenager once more, about 12 or 13, who was being bullied at school. Her name was Tina. I've changed the name, but in this case, her name's Tina. And she had Mean Tina, and Mean Tina would come and see her every night and would intimidate her and make life very difficult and scare her, tell her she should kill herself and things like that.
Yeah.
What we did was what I did with her was we created Super Tina. And like you're saying, Rena, so creating a character, we created Super Tina and what she would look like and what she would wear, and she drew her. And, I said, okay, if Mean Tina turns up when you're going to bed, call for Super Tina, because she can easily sort out Mean Tina. She's a superhero, for goodness sake, And, Mum fed back, oh, boy, thank you. Do we love Super Tina? She's sorted out the whole thing. So it's about, it's about reframing the dream, and it's very, very important. And I'm going to say this word because I've actually written down how to pronounce it, but it's the amygdala. And the amygdala is next to the hippocampus. It's very small.
In the brain, I should add.
Yeah, in the brain, yes. Yeah, not in the bedroom, but in the brain. And it's responsible for emotions and so on. And of course, one of the problems that poor kids have is that they, don't have a developed frontal lobe, which, controls emotions. And, that's why teenagers are so crazy. And, but that part of the brain, research has shown, is stimulated during dreaming. So in children's case, that's very much about the emotional control isn't there. So their dreams are going to be scarier, more vivid, more easier to see. And as I say, also capable of crossing over into this plane. So from a parent's point of view, the important thing is not to be scared by that and realize that this is just being a human being, and for whatever reason this is what's happening, and just to relax and work with the dream. There's always an answer, isn't it? I'm being chased by a monster. Have you thought of building a wall? It's not rocket science, is it? That it can't get over.
But think of what the gift is to the child by the parent getting that support to not be frightened. Because of course you'd be frightened, and given that guidance, to, work with the dream, be curious about the dream, play with the dream. Think of the gift you're giving the child: resilience, problem solving skills. Of course, it comes in extra super scary dimensions because I'm a child, but we can do extra super scary, build a wall, it's all work. We can work with it. The world isn't as it is. It can be played with.
Exactly. It's like the child has a library, and these are stories. And we all know how much children love stories, and this is the children's own stories.
Yeah, exactly.
That we can work with and, help to, resolve where they're really scary and hopefully, as I say, stop them recurring. I mean, one final example?
Yeah, crazy. Yes, please, Shaun, please. I've got lots of questions, but go with the examples.
go with the example is Fred the Friendly Fire Engine. I love Fred. Very, very sad story actually to begin with, in that this poor 9-year-old had watched her house burn down. Fortunately, the nanny had got them out of the house, but she'd watched her house burn down, and so of course she was having dreams about fires and so on. And there again, as I said, to work creatively, we drew the dream, which was house burning, as you can imagine. And I said, well, who might come and help in that situation? And she drew this huge fire engine that came and put the fire out. And I said, should we name a fire engine? What do you think? She said, yes. So she named it Fred the Friendly Fire Engine. And there again, next time I saw Mum, she said, "Oh, Fred the Friendly Fire Engine." He's really
nailed it.
To rescue. Yeah.
I think one of the things I'm intrigued about are there regular motifs that appear? Do you often see like Disney characters or TV characters appear regularly at different stages of children's lives, or are they mainly all sort of auto-created and they're people's own, kids' own imaginary characters? What do you find?
I mean, it's both, but yes, of course. We're talking archetypes.
Yeah.
So Star Wars, or cultural references like that are full of archetypes, as you say, Disney, Marvel. So these will pop up and come through a lot. Someone like Darth Vader, will pop up a lot.
Is he always the baddie when he pops up?
Yes. Well, with some boys, Darth Vader's a bit of a hero.
I love it.
But yeah, so these come through, but also, there will be things that come through from what as the unconscious does. It plucks, doesn't it? Plucks from what it's just seen or what's been around, and we'll use these, and you will get spiritual archetypes as well, because one thing I mentioned about the veil is I also honestly believe that the veil between the source and the child is much thinner as well. So very often, I often think, if a person comes into the room, watch what your children make of them, and pets as well. Dogs in particular are very wise, but so is the child. And if the child doesn't want to hug or doesn't want to go and say hello, you'll really get a message there. They really are being intuitive and picking something up. So I think that those sort of deep spiritual archetypes can come through. I had a child who dreamt a lot about a swan, and this swan was captured by this witch and couldn't escape. And it's a lovely story because, certainly I believe the swan's a soul image, and it has a lot of contact, connection with Rumi and so on. And I lent a Sufi friend of mine a book. And is this all right going all spiritual on you? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's great. Kids get this stuff. It gets knocked out of us as we get older.
It does, doesn't it? We're not meant. Yeah, and what was it? Alistair Campbell said, "We don't do God." Anyway, when the book was returned, put this image of this swan in it, which was just spreading its wings. And this child came in, and it just happened to be on the side. I hadn't thought about it, and the child said, "That's my swan. It's escaped." Which was lovely,
Yeah.
And there again. So I think in that case, the message. I mean, I'd argue that this is an example where I was, as the therapist, was probably given the message by the unconscious that this child's soul, if you like, is feeling trapped.
I think my other question is, are there sort of, you've mentioned a few age categories here. Are there certain triggers in life for sort of increased dream time? So 4 to 5 kids are going to school, obviously a whole new world to sort of fit into. It's outside of the family domain, very scary. Do you see a lot of dreams that start to surface in, say, 4 or 5-year-olds, and then at other school change over time as 8, 9, 11, 12, 13.
Yes. And, and research that has been done, it's very difficult to work out what's going on before about 3 with the research that's being done and what exactly. Did you know that Freud said that his 19-month-old baby talked about strawberries as scrambled eggs at 19 months?
Wow.
I think that's apocryphal, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, that level of language seems quite incredible. But, I mean, what do I know?
So we'll put that to one side. But really, about 3, dreams will be very simplistic. I think there's the formation of the ego, which is, 6, 7. And then through that period, 10, 11 seems to be the key period for recurring dreams and nightmares, and then as the brain matures, it tends to calm down into teenagehood, and then in the teenage years, the dreams become much more like adult dreams, and you can really start to work out what's going on, and they become less surreal, if you like, and more easy to identify. My daughter was working in a bar. So, she wasn't a child. She was probably 19 or something. But this is in the days of smoking. And her hair was being attacked by wasps in this recurrent dream.
Oh, yeah, interesting.
And I said, "Oh, poor you." I said, "I reckon that's the smoke you have to work in." I don't know if you can remember what it was like, but if you went into a pub,
exactly,
before 2000. It was just
exactly. Yeah. Whoa. I think the other question I'll do, because it's come up before from parents and also people writing in, is children's access to the notion of precog dreams, that they can sometimes, some of their dreams seem to be almost sort of cognitive, of something that then happens within the family. Have you come up against that at all, or across that at all?
Yeah, it certainly occurs. You have to be very careful with a child, and you have some families, particularly if they are that way inclined, that can pick up something like that and run with it, and it can be very difficult for the child. It can be one hell of a responsibility if the child is suddenly starting to get the impression that there's some kind of soothsaying guru, what something like that to be laid onto a child, as on their shoulders. And so I really would. You obviously can't deny the child's reality, but of course we can always just speak about chaos and the way statistically stuff happens more often than we realize. And I'd be very careful about allowing the child to start to think they're getting some kind of premonitions or anything like that, simply because it can be very scary and something that is a responsibility for them to have to carry.
Nice point, actually. Very good point.
Yeah. I mean, I think at some point, sometimes there's no doubt that there are people out there that seem to have this sort of uncanny ability. And, there again, it's important not to go the other way and deny the child's reality. But I think it really is about normalizing it and not allowing it to sort of escalate and take off.
Yeah. Well, Shaun, unfortunately, we have run out of time, and it has been absolutely fascinating. And I'm sure parents will love the advice, particularly between night terrors and nightmares and how to handle all of that. So thank you for joining the Dreamboat. It's been a real treat. And I know we've had so many requests for this episode to happen. So, Shaun, lovely, and good luck with all of your work. I know you are a real inspiration, not just to children, but to other therapists, both adult as well as child therapists. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I hope it's been helpful.
Yeah, it has.
Certainly enjoyable too.
So, children's dreams. I just found that so incredibly fascinating, and I just loved Shaun's examples because I've from clients, and I don't work with children, but from hearing clients talk about their children and children's dreams and things that people have said to me, his examples are so common to other things I've heard.
Really, well, first of all, he's so rich in experience. I mean, he's seen it all. And his manner, this normalizing process of, what these different developmental stages that children are going through, all that big work that their psyches and their egos are going through to develop. And he really brought to life that connection, that porosity that's still connected to the dynamic ground, to spirit that children have. And as the egos develop, that part recedes. But it's very porous in those early ages. So I thought that was fascinating. And I loved his distinction between night terrors and nightmares. And of course, I started getting all involved because the amygdala is trying to grow, and it doesn't need to be conscious because this is just washing machine stuff that the brain is doing is in night terrors. It's different than I just got very stimulated by what he was saying because it's just wonderful.
Yeah. No, I found what I like about Shaun's approach, and I think as parents, it's something that we need to sort of always remember is still respect what the child is bringing to you. There's nothing right about it. There's nothing wrong about it. It's all material in some way that they are processing and going through, and it needs to be approached with not fear, but respect. And Shaun really brings that over.
He really does. It's very calming. It's very reassuring. And then the parent becomes is more able to meet what the child, better equipped to deal with what's in front of them. It's wonderful.
Yeah, so super. I think he's brought the subject very well alive for us, and really like his approach. And he's such fun as well. He's like a child himself. Yes. He really gets it. But there we go. Anyway, So many thanks, everybody. Sweet dreams, of course, from me.
And go well from me.
So thank you for joining us for this week's episode. Don't forget to like us and leave comments on your favourite podcast platform. As I'm sure you know, that's the way we build an audience for the Dreamboat podcast and also to spread news about dreaming. And as we said, there are many ways you can share your dreams at the DRI, the Dream Research Institute.
Yes, we have courses, events, and workshops, and we want to hear from you. So check out the show notes for links, or find us on Instagram and on our Facebook page and on our website at driccpe.org.uk. And if you want to explore your dreams further, or you would like to support us, you can join the DRI as a member for just £30 a year. As a member, you will get discounts for all of our events and short courses. You'll get our newsletter with latest dream research news, and we'll also be adding other special member benefits during the year. Of course, members' dreams will always be given preference for reading on the podcast Dream of the Week slot. So go to the link on the show notes and become a DRI member today. Keep dreaming and keep sharing your dreams.